Tonight, the messages from that group chat of top officials discussing war plans are made public.
We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread.
In my view, Walz and Hegseth should go.
Some of the cabinet members in that chat are facing more questions from lawmakers amid louder calls for the Secretary of Defense to resign. What Pete Hegseth is saying and the pushback coming from the White House.
And this is very modest. What we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States.
President Trump announces new auto tariffs, how it will impact consumers. A rare victory for gun control advocates as the Supreme Court makes a major ruling on so-called ghost guns, those homemade, nearly untraceable weapons. One of the best soccer players who ever lived, now his death is at the center of a Supreme Court trial in Argentina as Diego Maradona's family accuses his medical team of homicide. Did he die of natural causes, or did his doctors let him die?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with the administration doubling down as the firestorm grows after that major national security breach. Today, The Atlantic published the group chat between top U.S. officials detailing the military strike on Yemen. The text shared on the Signal messaging app showed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calling out times and targets of the assault, saying, "We are a go for mission launch." But today, the White House insisted none of the material included in the text were war plans. President Trump called it all a witch hunt. On the Hill, Director of National Security Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe were grilled for a second straight day, this time facing a House panel. Both shifted responsibility to Hegseth. But hours ago, Hegseth fiercely denied he revealed any classified attack plans. The text and Hegseth's words in the chat are now public for the world to see. And we have reaction from someone who held Pete Hegseth's job under President Obama. Leon Panetta is coming up in a moment. But first, our chief global affairs anchor Martha Raddatz breaks down the newly released Signal messages.
Tonight, the text messages at the heart of this national security breach now revealed. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing highly sensitive military plans for U.S. airstrikes in Yemen hours before the attacks were launched. Reporter Jeffrey Goldberg had been inadvertently added to the group chat with top administration officials on the commercial messaging app Signal. Today, Hegseth defiant, insisting he did nothing wrong.
Nobody's texting war plans.
But the details exposed in the chat are stark. 2.5 hours before the attack was set to begin, Hegseth sending this message outlining the plan to the group, which included Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and of course, that reporter. Team update, Hegseth wrote. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM, we are a go for mission launch. Hegseth explaining what would happen next. 12:15, F-18s launch, first strike package. Then writing that about 2 hours later, more F-18s launch, second strike package. He told the group that 5 minutes after that, strike drones on target, adding, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. And that about an hour later, the F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. Today, Hegseth insisting he didn't divulge any classified information that would have put American troops in harm's way had his messages fallen into the wrong hands.
There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths.
But for this operation, those F-18 fighter jets would have only been launched from one place, the USS Truman in the Red Sea, and Hegseth provided the timing of the launch in the group chat. Today, the secretary refusing to answer questions.
Thank you very much. We're heading off
strike plans before they launched. Mr. Secretary, how do you square what you said with what your messages show?
The publication of the attack plans now turning up the heat on other administration officials in the group chat. Yesterday, CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard claimed there was no mention of specifics about weapons or timing.
Did this conversation at some point include information on weapons packages, targets, or timing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Director Gabbard, same question.
Same answer.
Today, Gabbard under pressure, testifying she didn't remember the details in the newly revealed texts.
So it's your testimony that less than 2 weeks ago, you were on a Signal chat that had all of this information about F-18s and MQ-9 Reapers and targets on strike, and you in that 2-week period simply forgot that that was there. That's your testimony?
My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there.
But so far, the only administration official taking responsibility for anything is National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who admitted he inadvertently invited the journalist to the group chat. Tonight, President Trump standing behind his team.
There was no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful that night.
Our thanks to Martha Raddatz. The Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg firmly pushed back against the Trump administration's claims. He spoke to ABC News Live anchor Kira Phillips earlier today.
Pete Hegseth put in the group chat, not understanding that a civilian, namely me, was in the group chat, put in the group chat that the attack was about to be launched, told everybody exactly what time the planes were leaving, what times the planes were arriving at Houthi strongholds over Yemen. Obviously, information like that could put American pilots in danger. They have decided, obviously, instead of simply saying, yeah, we had a security breach and we're going to try to plug that breach and do better next time, they've decided to blame the guy who they invited into the conversation.
So let me ask you this. Why did you change from war plans to attack plans? The administration is seizing on that.
I mean, the semantic games are ridiculous. I would say that the term war plan more generally refers to a strategic level discussion, whereas attack plan is more tactical about times and weapons used and specific targets. In this case, this Houthi terrorist that they were trying to kill, and I think they did kill. And so attack seemed like a more accurate word to describe it. However, again, it's just all nonsense. It's nonsense. They're throwing up all these smoke screens to avoid being questioned about why they were so reckless.
We are joined now by President Obama's former Secretary of Defense and his CIA head, Leon Panetta. Secretary, thank you so much for your time tonight. To put a finer point on this, the current head of the CIA and the Secretary of Defense were in the Signal chat, positions you held. Pete Hegseth doubled down today. I want to play you a bit of what he had to say.
Nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning, out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
He's weeks into a job that you did for years. You've seen the texts. Your response to what Hegseth just said?
Well, the truth is the truth, and all you have to do is look at the copy of that transcription, and you can see that it contains very specific information about targets, about weapons, about platforms, about timing, in particular about timing of the attack. There's no question that this was an attack plan that should have been protected as highly classified information. This is a security breach, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts about the breach that it constituted.
Secretary Clinton, who you know well, she said the arrogance and incompetence puts the lives of our military men and women in danger. Give us a sense of what the real world danger is of having this information shared over Signal.
Well, look, the Defense Department, when I was secretary, and almost every Department of Defense develops war plans in order to deal with potential crises that are out there, and obviously prepares attack plans when we're doing a military action. That is the most sensitive, highly classified information we have because it does involve targets, it does involve weapons, and it does involve timing of the attack that is to occur. And any breach of that information, any compromise of that information could cost lives, it could undermine the military mission itself, and it could certainly weaken our national security.
Putting your Secretary of Defense hat on, if one of your deputies made an error like this, would you have revoked their clearances immediately, outright fired them right away?
No, there's no question that there is no excusing putting a journalist, of all people, a journalist, onto a secret discussion of our highest national security officials. That was a careless and reckless mistake. There is no excusing it, and that person should be fired because, frankly, it should never happen again.
What's more egregious in your estimation, that someone included a journalist on this chat, or that this, as you described, classified information was discussed over Signal?
Yeah, no, I mean, you've got a journalist. I mean, imagine that this happened to be a journalist who was at least aware of what was involved here. But imagine if you had had a journalist for an adversary, Russia, China, Iran, if they had access to that information, they would have immediately revealed it to our adversary, to Yemen. And in revealing that information, it would have given them the ability to strike our forces first, to go after our aircraft carriers, go after our destroyers, and literally take, hundreds of lives that would have been lost and a mission that would have failed.
Secretary Panetta, as always, we so appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Good to be with you.
And joining us now is the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks. Congressman, thank you so much for your time tonight. By now, I'm sure you have seen the text that the Atlantic editor-in-chief released today. You've penned a letter to Secretary of Defense Hegseth. He's denied war plans were exchanged. Goldberg says that's simply not true. I don't know if at this point it's just a matter of semantics. The Atlantic has now said that they were attack plans minimally. What do you think after you've seen the text for yourself?
Well, I think that the American people can see it for themselves. Clearly, if there's anything that was classified, it was in those signal exchanges. When you talk about how and when and where you're going to strike, that is something that they don't even tell members of Congress sometimes in a skiff. Ordinary people, for me, for example, anything that I have inside a skiff, if I take it out, I'm in trouble. I'm breaking the law. And that's why I think that Mr. Hegseth needs to resign or be fired.
And so you think that that would satisfy the repercussions here?
I think that that would, strengthen our national security positions and interests. I don't think that he was qualified for the job in the first place. And he's proven already in this early time on the job that he's not. And so somebody has to be held accountable. Look, the lives of our brave soldiers, the pilots, are put on the line. And to have it on a commercial network like Signal endangers their lives. So I don't think that we can have this kind of incompetence.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said further scrutiny of the incident in terms of congressional hearings or an inspector general report, quote, doesn't seem necessary to me. Your response to that?
Well, it's amazing to me how my Republican colleagues are tying themselves into knots, trying to deny what they see with their own eyes, and their eyes are not lying to them. All you have to do is to read, because, we don't know what other conversations may have been taking place over Signal with national security information. We need a thorough and complete investigation into what took place here, what has taken place previously. So it is the right thing for us to do what our oath of office asks of us, and that is to be the oversight of the executive branch of government. And so we should do our jobs and not try to make alibis for Donald Trump, who does not want to be president, he really wants to be king.
You just mentioned the Biden administration, so I know you don't like to deal with hypotheticals, but of course you used to be the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. If you were the chair and this scandal happened during his administration, would you open an investigation?
Absolutely. This is not a partisan issue. This is about the national security of the United States of America. And once upon a time, we would come together, Democrats and Republicans, no matter who, to make sure that that takes place, that occurs. This is the first time, and I've been in Congress now for 27 years, that I can see that individuals don't care whether the Constitution or whether laws are being broken, that they are now just trying to make sure that they stand by the president without reviewing the facts. This is not service to the American people. This is not what we're supposed to be doing as members of the United States Congress. This should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. This should be an issue about the security of all Americans.
Congressman Gregory Meeks, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Today, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited the notorious prison facility in El Salvador, where the Trump administration deported alleged Venezuelan gang members. Noem donned a blue ice ball cap as she walked the halls with armed men. It is El Salvador's largest prison, which can house up to 40,000 inmates. Alongside her, a small group of U.S. Secret Service agents and prisoners packed in cells, lined up with masks on and their shirts off. The administration has provided little proof that all of the migrants sent there are actually gang members, but still accuse them of being in the U.S. illegally. Noem's visit comes as the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected the administration's effort to lift a judge's block on mass deportations under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Judge James Boasberg temporarily blocked the administration's use of the law to deport the alleged gang members. In today's ruling, the judge wrote the administration's attempt to remove them in that manner deprives the men of even a gossamer thread of due process. Tonight, President Trump is pushing forward with a new wave of tariffs targeting the auto industry, imposing a 25% tariff on imported vehicles, hoping to boost manufacturing in the U.S.
You're going to have a lot of construction jobs, but you're also going to have a lot of automobile jobs. So this is very exciting.
The president says the move will raise $100 billion in revenue. The move is expected to raise costs for automakers and dealers, which will likely be passed on to American consumers. So what does this mean for you? We have a former member of Biden's National Economic Council to break it down for us. But first, our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, joins us from the White House. Rachel, what did the president have to say about these tariffs today?
Well, Linsey, the president making it clear that the United States is going to move forward with a 25% tariff across the board on all cars that are made outside of the United States and also all auto parts that are also made outside of the United States. Now, these tariffs are set to go into effect in just a matter of days on April 2nd, and this could significantly raise prices for consumers. Nearly half of all cars are imported into the United States. This would also apply to cars that are assembled overseas and then brought back and sold here in the United States. Now, Wall Street did react to this news, hearing that the president would be moving forward with implementing these tariffs, and the stocks did drop. You may remember just a few weeks ago, the top three American automakers begged the president for a reprieve, not to move forward with these tariffs. Well, in the Oval Office, the president was asked directly if there was any scenario in which he would remove these tariffs. The president making it clear they are here permanently. He says his goal is to drive up manufacturing in the United States, Linsey.
Rachel Scott from the White House for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Let's go now to Brendan Duke, Senior Director for Federal Budget Policy at the Center on Budget and Priorities and formerly on Biden's National Economic Council. Mr. Duke, thanks so much for coming on the show. What is actually impacted by these tariffs?
So we're still trying to unpack the details and get into the fine print, but it appears to hit both cars manufactured overseas that are finished and auto parts, which really actually hits U.S. workers who are automakers in the U.S. but rely on imported parts, U.S. built parts that you and I drive.
Could we see the prices of American cars go up as well?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we're an integrated supply chain in North America. So, a U.S. car relying on auto parts from Mexico, from Canada, they go between the border several times. And so those auto parts, that's a very big deal. And then on top of that, it'll allow, U.S. automakers to raise prices because they'll just have less competition. So I really, again, Americans are concerned about high prices. They're really upset about them. This is just going to make it a lot more expensive to buy it.
These latest tariffs not only impact finished cars, but also car parts. That sounds significant as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So this consumers who are buying the finished cars, but it also hits U.S. workers who work for, say, Mercedes or BMW, who, they work in the United States. They're American workers, but a lot of the parts are, manufactured overseas. And those automakers are going to have to adjust, and we just don't know how they're going to. This is going to cause the whole business model to kind of fall apart, and we're going to have to figure out how to put it back together again. And on top of that, he's turning this off, and also makes it really hard for automakers to know what to do next. And it doesn't make sense to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in a supply chain when President Trump, by the stroke of a pen, can just turn it off.
Brendan Duke, our thanks to you. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Now to a developing story overseas. 4 American soldiers are missing. They disappeared while training in Lithuania, and an urgent search and rescue mission is now underway. ABC Chief International Correspondent James Longman reports.
4 U.S. soldiers are missing tonight after an incident during a training mission in Eastern Europe. The armoured vehicle they were operating discovered submerged in a body of water. This was a tactical exercise in Lithuania on the border with Belarus.
It is still early news, so we do not know the details, but obviously this is really terrible news, and our thoughts are with the families and loved ones.
An official confirming to ABC News soldiers from Fort Stewart in Georgia went missing Tuesday, riding in a 70-ton M88 armoured vehicle, which was sent to recover another vehicle that had broken down during an exercise. The US and Lithuanian military at the scene. The Lithuanian defence minister calling this a complicated rescue operation that will take some time.
Linsey, hundreds of American soldiers are stationed in Lithuania as part of the NATO force. They were first deployed in 2014 after Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea. Their presence has grown in importance since his full-scale invasion in 2022. Linsey?
James, thank you. Today, the Supreme Court delivered a rare victory for advocates of gun control. In a 7-2 decision, the justices upheld a Biden administration policy restricting access to so-called ghost guns, weapons you assemble yourself that are mostly untraceable. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, the Supreme Court, in a major ruling, trying to stop suspected felons like the man in this video from getting untraceable so-called ghost guns.
Shots fired, shots fired.
In a 7-2 decision, the High Court upholding the Biden administration policy that such guns, like the one the suspect is seen using here, firing at police, can be regulated by the federal government. The regulations force some companies that manufacture gun part kits to place serial numbers on their products and to require background checks on customers trying to purchase them. It also mandates that people buying such kits be at least 18 years of age. Writing for the majority, Justice Neil Gorsuch said, as so, the kit comes with all necessary components, and its intended function as an instrument of combat is obvious. Really, the kit's name says it all: buy, build, shoot. But Justice Clarence Thomas argued that such kits do not meet the statutory definition of a firearm, saying the majority's decision blesses the government's overreach.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. A Tufts University PhD student in the U.S. was on visa, was arrested by immigration authorities outside of Boston, according to the school. Security video shows the moment the Turkish national was detained by officials Tuesday night. According to the school and the student's lawyer, she was headed to meet friends to break her Ramadan fast. Her lawyer stated that she maintains valid F1 status as a PhD student at the university. A senior Homeland Security official alleges investigators found the student engaged in activities in support of Hamas. Wildfires burning in the Carolinas have exploded in size. Some fires are growing so quickly, in fact, that certain evacuation centers themselves were forced to evacuate. Here's our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z.
Tonight, growing danger in North and South Carolina as multiple stubborn wildfires that have already destroyed nearly a dozen homes continue to rage.
They are continuing to grow.
Overnight, new evacuation orders in Pickens County, South Carolina, as shifting winds blew the Table Rock fire all the way to this reservoir. And outside Asheville, North Carolina.
Very active fire, running fire that they're dealing with.
Firefighters battling the out-of-control Black Cove Complex fire in steep, rugged terrain that is littered with trees knocked down by Hurricane Helene. Matthew Rogers had just moved back to his cabin in Flat Rock after Helene tore apart the only bridge leading into his neighborhood. On Sunday, he was forced to evacuate. By Monday, he saw a Facebook video showing his home burning to the ground.
I said, that's our house. There's our lake. The dock is still there, but the house it's gone.
About all that's left is the chimney.
Such difficult and haunting images there are, thanks to Ginger. There are new concerns tonight about measles cases in this country. Health officials are tracking a vaccinated train passenger who somehow became infected and could have spread the illness to others on their cross-country trip. ABC's Morgan Norwood has the latest.
Tonight, with measles cases growing nationwide, health officials are investigating whether a patient with the rare breakthrough infection spread the virus to others on an Amtrak train. The vaccinated person from Minnesota, who recently traveled abroad, somehow became infected with the measles. And last week, boarded a busy train from New York City to Washington, D.C., where they visited multiple locations before showing up at a D.C. urgent care 4 days later.
Breakthrough infections in vaccinated individuals are rare and usually mild. These individuals are less likely to transmit the virus compared to those that are unvaccinated.
The highly contagious measles virus can linger in the air for at least 2 hours, and 90% of unvaccinated people exposed will become infected. It comes as measles cases climb to 378 across 17 states.
Disconcerting there, thanks to Morgan. Now to the somber memorial in Baltimore for the victims of the Key Bridge collapse. Families of the 6 men who died were joined by Maryland's governor and other officials. They gathered at the place where the bridge once stood, one by one tossing wreaths into the river to honor their loved ones. The bridge collapsed a year ago today after being hit by a barge. Coming up, what prosecutors say was smuggled in Luigi Mangione's socks, and what we're learning was in the backpack the accused killer carried when he was caught. But first, the trial of the century in Argentina. What and possibly who killed soccer legend Diego Maradona? And before we go to break, a live look at the volcano Mount Kilauea erupting right now in Hawaii. It erupts from time to time and is not unexpected. No communities are at risk. The plume of lava is roughly 60 stories high. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. From the hand of God to the eyes of the law, the death of Diego Armando Maradona, one of the greatest soccer players ever, is now being argued before the Supreme Court in Argentina. Did he die of natural causes, or did his team of doctors stand by and allow his death? We take a look at the first 2 weeks of the trial. Diego Armando Maradona El Diez. Bueno, como quiera. The number 10, arguably one of the best football or soccer players of all time. The 1986 FIFA World Cup quarterfinals game against England, he mesmerized the world with the goal of the century. And his famous hand of God. He was just 5'5", but a revered giant.
The man with the golden feet.
Boca Juniors, Barcelona, Napoli, a World Cup. The greatest idol many in Argentina and beyond have ever met.
Podemos confirmar, lamentablemente, con un tremendo dolor que atraviesa el país y todo el mundo, el fallecimiento de Diego Armando Maradona aproximadamente a las 12 horas del día de la fecha.
His death during the peak of COVID in November of 2020 sent shockwaves through the South American country and the world. Maradona was 60 years old. In Argentina, 3 days of national mourning. Thousands lined up at the presidential palace to bid their idol farewell. At first, his death was ruled a cardiac arrest, which many found unsurprising given his struggles with addiction. But questions began mounting, and an investigation was ultimately launched into his death. The targets, 7 medical professionals, all in charge of his care. Asesino! Asesino! Almost 5 years after his passing, the trial against his medical team is now underway in Buenos Aires. Could the man who was co-selected as Player of the Century by FIFA have been the victim of voluntary manslaughter? The plaintiffs, his children. Prosecutors say they have proof Maradona died of medical negligence.
El 25 de noviembre del año 2020, cercano al mediodía, deliberadamente y con crueldad, decidieron que muriera. Todo esto va a ser probado en este juicio.
A stunning point in the trial, a photo of Maradona's dead body.
Así murió Maradona. Quien les venga a decir a ustedes, los jueces, que no percibieron lo que le pasaba a Diego, les están mintiendo en la cara.
Inflated and intubated, nearly unrecognizable. The defense denies the allegations, and the lawyer for Maradona's psychiatrist argued the photo shown in court was not fair play.
Ya está demostrado que la lamentable muerte de Maradona no tiene ningún tipo de vinculación con el accionar de los 8 imputados. Ya quedó acreditado con las últimas 3 pericias.
The prosecution argues that in the last weeks of his life, Maradona was transferred home despite not having full mental clarity. That same home is where he was monitored by his medical team. Prosecutors argue the at-home hospitalization was reckless and deficient, and that the house didn't have the proper medical equipment to treat him. The attorney representing 2 of his daughters described the home as a, quote, pigsty. The prosecution clearly states Maradona's death was completely avoidable.
Pero ustedes con la imagen del otro día pueden graficar cómo sufrió y cómo estuvo Diego los últimos días. Y cuando vean todas las imágenes que hay, se van a sorprender y se van a quedar cortos cuando nosotros dijimos que era la casa del horror.
The spotlight is on Maradona's neurosurgeon, his physician for the last 4 years of his life, who performed a surgery to remove a blood clot from Maradona's brain just weeks before his death. And also his psychiatrist, who prescribed the medication the football legend took until his passing. And on Tuesday, his ex-bodyguard was arrested for allegedly lying on the stand.
Hoy se paga todo, guacho. El diablo se puso de amigo. Me lo robaron, loco. Me lo sacaron, me lo quitaron, loco. Todos los días lo lloro, loco.
Outside the court, more drama as fans gather to support the idol's family.
Tranquila, Vero. Chicos, Fernando para todos ustedes. Gracias por venir.
3 judges will ultimately decide whether the medical professionals are guilty. If sentenced, they faced up to 25 years in prison. According to prosecutors, more than 100 witnesses are expected to be called to testify, in addition to 120,000 messages and audio recordings. In a trial that has shocked the South American country and will continue unfolding well into the summer.
Y hoy, Diego Armando Maradona, sus hijos, sus deudos, sus más cercanos y el pueblo argentino merecen justicia.
Still some time before that concludes. Coming up, oh, Canada. Our northern neighbors have long been the top international travelers to the U.S. Now they're staying home. Plus, a Capitol hearing gets heated as Republicans and Democrats battle it out over funding PBS.
I'm sad to see that this once proud committee to hold a hearing to go after the likes of Elmo and Cookie Monster and Arthur the Aardvark.
Welcome back, everyone. President Trump has threatened heavy tariffs on Canada. He's also mused about making our neighbor to the north America's 51st state and has even mocked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, calling him governor. Just as travel season is heating up, unhappy Canadians are now protesting with their pocketbooks, canceling their U.S. vacations, as we detail in tonight's By the Numbers. Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods like energy and fertilizer have ranged from 10 to 25%. He dropped one of his most serious threats against Canadian steel and aluminum after auto execs lobbied him at the White House. Displeased Canadians likely took out their frustrations by making 13% fewer trips to the U.S. by air last month than they did in 2024. This is according to preliminary data from Canada's National Statistical Office. Land border crossings plummeted even further, falling 23% in the past year. America's hospitality industry and other businesses taking it on the chin, losing $2 billion for every 10% drop in Canadian travelers. A drop also costing 14,000 Americans their jobs, according to the U.S. Travel Association trade group. And coming up, Alec Baldwin's feature film Rust was long delayed after the film's cinematographer was accidentally shot and killed on set. We'll show you the movie's first trailer. A congressional hearing about PBS goes off the rails. A first look at a movie that was infamous before it even finished filming, and more mayhem ahead for Little Monsters. Those stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Congressional Republicans took aim at public broadcasters during a hearing on funding for public media.
NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers.
The DOJ subcommittee split along party lines, with Democrats defending the public outlets and accusing the GOP for trying to distract from issues like the signal controversy.
So I'm sad to see that this once proud committee, the principal investigative committee in the House of Representatives, has now stooped to the lowest levels of partisanship and political theater to hold a hearing to go after the likes of Elmo and Cookie Monster.
Prosecutors say Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, violated special treatment he was given because of a pair of socks. Mangione received accommodations for fashion needs before a February court appearance, which allowed him to change from jail-issued clothing. The new clothes included a pair of Argyle socks wrapped around cardboard, which the DA's office said held 2 personal notes. It comes as a newly disclosed court document details the backpack Mangione had when he was arrested, reporting it was full of items suggesting he was planning to stay on the run and perhaps kill again. 2 teenagers are under arrest, accused in a brazen robbery. Police sharing surveillance video showing a car crashing into a gun store. Several thieves rushing into the store, grabbing merchandise. Authorities tracking the suspects from the air, arresting 2 16-year-olds. They say they recovered multiple stolen guns. The first trailer for Alec Baldwin's long-delayed film, Rust, has been released.
Heaven ain't waiting on neither one of us.
Filming on the Western was paused in 2021 after cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed on set when a prop gun Baldwin was rehearsing with discharged. The incident resulting in jail time for armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and an involuntary manslaughter indictment against Baldwin that was eventually dropped. The film is scheduled to be released May 2nd. Lady Gaga is going back on the road. The pop star announced the Mayhem Ball Tour with performances across North America, Europe, and the UK. It's the first arena tour since 2018 for Gaga, whose newest album, Mayhem, debuted atop the Billboard charts. The tour is scheduled to start in July after Gaga headlines at Coachella and performs special shows in Brazil, Mexico, and Singapore. In West Philadelphia, he was born and raised and now has a street named for him. Will Smith was on hand for the introduction of Will Smith Way at the corner of North 59th Street and Lancaster Avenue. The Oscar and Grammy winner, who has a new album out this week, spoke at the ceremony about the honor and his love for his home city.
Philly, I love you. I am yours. You are mine.
Ambition, ego, and the cutthroat world of filmmaking in the new show, The Studio. Seth Rogen stars as Matt Remick, the new head of Continental Studios. As the movie industry struggles to stay relevant, Matt and his team try to handle it all, from narcissistic artists to corporate pressure and their own insecurities, all while trying to make hit films. Let's take a look.
Patty's fired. I just talked to her assistant. She's out.
Oh my God!
The story is about to break on deadline.
Oh my God!
Apparently she came to the office a mess and then just spit off the lot.
Yes! Yes! I knew this was gonna happen. I mean, it's very sad, and I love Patty, but this could be my time.
Joining us now is one of the show's stars, Chase Wee Wonders. Chase, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Lindsay, it's great to be here.
What was it like? It felt like you were really engaged while you were watching that.
I know. I mean, it's funny. We've seen the show a couple times now in front of big audiences, and I'm still like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? This is amazing.
I love that you're so drawn in, and you already know, so we can only imagine for new viewers. So tell us about Quinn. She recently was promoted, and give us a sense of who she is in her journey.
Quinn is a power-hungry little Machiavellian, total, she's addicted to ambition. She's
Okay.
addicted to slashing people at the knees. And yeah, she's just trying to elbow her way into a seat at the boys' table.
Did you rely on any real life experiences in this portrayal?
My best friend Hannah is the assistant to a director. So I've seen her sort of, want all this power and want it now, but then have to kind of earn her stripes. And Seth and Evan and I talked a bunch about being young and in Hollywood and having people not really take you quite seriously. So you having to like speak up twice as loud, be twice as funny in order to get your voice heard. But no real people. I think it was like an amalgamation.
Oh, got it.
A
Okay.
tapestry of
Well, that's good to know, I guess, that no one's
Yes. No, it's
that
not-
cutthroat maybe, but they are?
No, they are. No, they definitely are. But I wasn't basing it on one horrible, ambitious person.
Did the series at all change your perspective of the industry, for good or bad?
I think honestly for good. I think oftentimes you think of these people in these decision-making rooms as being just totally concerned with the bottom line and the bottom line only. And I think there is like a deep love of movies that energizes this whole sort of machine. And I think that aspect of it is kind of lost on lots of people who get told no or get a studio note that they don't care for. I think it's like, ultimately, these are cinephiles that are making these decisions.
And of course, this is an all-star cast with a number of notable guest stars. What drew you into playing Quinn, the creative executive?
I mean, I had to audition, so I was begging to be a part of this. But really, Seth and Evan, I mean, I've grown up watching all their movies. I mean, This Is the End, Superbad, Pineapple Express. These are all movies that really like kind of formed my personality and my sense of humor, I think, in many ways. And then you got Catherine Hahn, Catherine O'Hara, Bryan Cranston, Ike Barinholtz. They're all legends. And then the scripts were amazing to boot. So it was really unbeatable.
Of course, the show is all about chasing those big dreams. Are you able to let us into any kind of dream character, dream role that you might want to have?
I mean, I hope that getting to laugh on this set was one of the real joys of my career. Like when the cameras weren't rolling, we were like just keeled over, constantly just having the best time. And I think just continuing to work with amazing people who don't take themselves too seriously is a big one. But yeah, continuing to play women who are one degree off, a little offbeat, I think is the goal.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Chase, we thank you so much for coming by. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And want to let our viewers know you can catch new episodes of The Studio every Wednesday on Apple TV+. It is crunch time for college admissions. Most high school seniors find out between mid-March and mid-April where they'll be accepted, and the competition is closer than ever. Chase Matthews will go pretty much anywhere she wants to. The senior at Westlake High School in Atlanta has been accepted to, get this, 155 colleges and universities. That includes at least one in every state. And Chase is kind enough to join us now. First of all, congratulations. Your family must be so proud. What made you apply to all these schools?
Thank you so much. What made me apply? I wanted to show to young girls and young children in my generation that we can do anything and you can go wherever you want.
Is this a record?
Yes, it is.
So Guinness is probably going to be reaching out anytime. Obviously, you're a good student. What else do you think makes you such an attractive candidate?
I think what also makes me an attractive candidate is my dedication to the arts as well as what I do outside of school. Outside of school, I'm in my school's marching, jazz, symphonic, as well as musical bands, and DECA, and 2 pathways, and a member of the Atlanta Music Project in downtown Atlanta, as well as a member of National Honor Society.
Oh, so you are busy. You are busy. And we also understand that the scholarship offers have been pouring in. And give us a sense of how much you're talking about.
$6 million in institutional scholarships.
Wow. Congratulations. So obviously your parents are relieved. It sounds like a free ride ahead at the location that you ultimately decide. What do you want to go to school for?
I want to go to school for pre-pharmacy.
Okay. All right. And so what would you like to do with that ultimately?
With that, I like to open my own chain of pharmacies as well as mobile pharmacies to make medicine more accessible and affordable for communities.
Fantastic. Well, we will have you back on once you do that. We see that coming in your future. The big question for now, the drum roll, have you decided which school you're going to go to?
No, but I do have a top 5.
Okay, can you give us a sense of the top 5?
Right, we have Florida A&M University, The Ohio State, Hampton University, Howard University, as well as Texas Southern University, all having 6-year accelerated pharmacy programs where I can receive my doctorate of pharmacy in 6 years instead of the usual 8.
What's ultimately going to help you narrow it down from those 5 to the final one?
Just the environment. I'm looking for a familial environment as well as a supportive group of teachers and students on campus.
When will you ultimately decide?
By decision day, so watch out for me on May 1st.
May 1st. All right. Okay, so you still have a little bit over a month. Okay, Chase Matthews, once again, congratulations. All the best to you. Hope you'll come back on once you open up those pharmacies.
Thank you so much.
And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.